speaker we're very, very lucky to have. The company he's associated with is actually here on the board, Dahra Agriculture. He is a man of very many talents with a multitude of roles spanning the worlds of government, diplomacy, and agro-trade and industry. So really all three rolled into one that we need to address today. He is with us today in his role as co-founder and vice chairman of Dahra Agriculture, a position he's holding in parallel to his being appointed CEO of the private office of His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Zayed Al Nahyan. He will speak today about private sector investment in agriculture. Later on, he will also join us on the panel with a discussion. And the focus really is on PPP and how this can be encouraged, not only in the UAE, but also in countries that count a lot towards food security within the UAE. So I'd like to ask to the stage His Excellency Khadim Abdulla Aldarei.
Good morning, everybody. Like Hassan said, there will be little data. I will tell you there's no data. Just the data that I will share you, my experience, and regarding the food security and the nightmare that everybody is talking about, and he is concerned about it either individually or governmentally. The word food security sustainability is a very broad word, and we can simplify it to the family level. When you have a crisis, either a blizzard of snow over your weekend, or there's a thunderstorm that will be hitting your state or hitting your you will go to the the supermarket, and you will try to buy your need from milk or food at least for 3 days. As simple as this. This goes up to government, this goes up to international institute, and how to strategize it. But the question is, how can we do this? Is it doable? And what are the challenges associated with this? There's no simple answer for this, but there are some practices has been proven, and it has been very successful in some of the areas where some governments, they think and they share the views and the challenge that, and they brainstorm with the private sector, and they reach a conclusion or at least a long-term strategy. When we talk about food security sustainability, we have in Aldarei Agriculture the chance to play, or at least to feel or to see the three or the two major aspects, which is one, the supplier, who are exporter, and also the receivers or the consumers or the importers. So each one of these two parties, they have issues and they have concerns. We have been moderately successful enough to address these two concerns between the producer as well as the consumer, and to try to narrow the gaps in order to reach a very sustainable model where we have the joint hand together from the private as well as from the public. So the definition or the strategy or the policy that we think regarding the food security, which we call it with the sharp vision and leadership for our government, UAE, and here to be precisely, Abu Dhabi Food Security Center, we call the terminology AAA. What does mean AAA? One is availability. Two, accessibility. Three, affordability. We can spend times and long time on defining each one of them, but I'll try to be brief, and later we'll have the discussion, and I will leave the floor for one of my colleagues. I'm sure they will talk about these elements. But the pillars of availability, that how much available lands are suitable for cultivation of the food or the crop that we need. When it comes to if we have more available land, that means we have more commodities, so there is no worry. But the challenge is that we have, it's true, even though there are some more acreage has been cultivated since 70s till today, but that is not enough. Compared to the growing population, which already you have the data, it's nearly about 8 billion persons. And the challenge is that the most demand coming, or the hunger is coming from the countries where they have a lot of land, but that land not being cultivated or efficiently used. Not because of the scarcity of water, the scarcity of labor, but I think the scarcity of capital. And we can carry on, and the reason why the scarcity of capital, because this lies on the governments. How governments are pioneer and innovative in promoting foreign investment and facilitating the investment by all means, liberation of ownership of the land, regulation, having a very constructive bilateral relationship with the government to conclude a very sustainable bilateral investment and exchange of commodities. We are in UAE. We are not agriculture country, even in GCC, but we have then the financial resources where we can exchange equity by having commodity. And we found this business model or strategy is working in some countries, and that's why you find us more investing in these countries. The other part, once we have more available land, that means we have more commodities. Once we have more commodities, that means the people in the host country or in the first country, they will have more available goods to eat, more food commodity to export. So, more jobs and others. Without spending much time in this point, I will go to the other point, which is very important, which is the accessibility. When we talk about the accessibility of goods, there is two parts. One, it's political, and the other one is logistic. And these 2 points are very critical and important because in the last years we have seen some regulation and political decision being taken either by imposing tariffs or forbidding export for reason or another, even it's for 1 month. It triggers countries, it triggers the private sector. There is a risk itself. So that we make sure that, and governments must make sure that this is not going to happen. And how can we do that? Here the time where the international bodies like United Nations or World Bank or UNDP to try to facilitate or to protect this. Because we have commitment, and we give that commitment to the host country. We will try to supply them as much as we can, but we need, or countries, sometimes we play the roles on behalf of the mandatory that our governments or strategic partner they ask us to do, to have a continuous supply. And the accessibility is not just from the importing country, but also the countries that are important. I will try to give an example. I'm really sorry here, but we have to be transparent. When we talk about the export ban, you know, we are a country that exporting a lot of rice. We have seen in India, 2008, that we have an issue of export ban, and that was for us. Till today is a critical issue, and we need that to be accommodated and ensure that doesn't happen in the future. Another real example today, look what's happening in Syria. Syria has been producing, and they have an efficient production to feed them. But because of the other political unrest, that is the human feed or the human cannot get access to that one. So these two real examples, and someone can elaborate and add to this. The other one is logistic. Logistic is very important, and you know, the international trade lines goes through different or mainly three routings, which is for us in the region, and being specific about GCC, Suez Canal and Strait of Hormuz. So political risk, political unrest is very important, and another critical issue which we can we look at it in Dahra by diversifying our investment to make sure that the supply of the goods does not pass by to this international trade line corridors. So, and with the investment that and the vision that the government has supported us with, we were able to have a great story that we can share, and our colleagues later on this they will share. Once we have this, accessibility is being solved. That means there is no worry if you are accommodating the availability of the good and that you have the route or you have the accessibility to reach or the good to reach the end user regardless of where they reside. The last part, which is the affordability, and this is very controversial questions and very controversial issues. When you talk about it, it depends on which position that you will take, and sometimes we have that flexibility or the roles that what we have played or we have investing in. When it comes to the supplier or the supplier point of view or the producer, always the argument that you will have, there is a subsidies and some cultivatable land that using for energy, so there is a scarcity or lack of available land that can produce as much as we do need, so that create a pressure on the lease land or the own land. The other one, which we call them the input in the agriculture, which is the energy cost as well as the fertilizer cost. And the study has shown, I don't want to dump you or bother you with that, a lot of data, but the people that who is concerned about it, they can find it and they can Google it and they can find the information that's needed. So the customer, the supplier, or the producer, they have an issue and they have the concerns. How to make the products available, how to make it more competitive and also quality oriented. With a modest example, we are in UAE, in Dahra, we have invested in technology, and mainly in the irrigation system, where we can increase the yield by the less available land, but increasing more the yield while controlling the quality. But that has a cost, and that cost, the more volume that you have, the more affordable that can be. So in this issue, technology and being innovative in the input that contribute to the agriculture production is very important and highlighted, and we are welcoming any ideas or investment in that direction, whether it's in the seed, in the fertilizer, or in the technology. And this is a domain that has to be focused on and to be developed in the future. The other part is, which is the most, let's say, affected, and unfortunately is growing rapidly, which is the consumers. First of all, the private sector, the people that they are investing, they need a return on their investment, so they go on supply and demand. But when at the same time, if you are producing and nobody is buying or can afford the product that you are being affected. Therefore, it goes parallel. Customer and consumer behavior or spending, it must be calculated, because we have to be innovative in how much we consume and how much we produce. Because if the production is more than the supply, there will be a shorting, and you will see many land converted to real estate instead of agriculture. But if there are less land available and the consuming, that will lead to a price increase, which at the end of the day, we are human, we are consuming it. Either we are producing or not, but unfortunately, the consuming side is increasing to a degree where there is a pain or suffering from the price or the affordability. But I think the key issues in this, where we find more people are in need for the food, they have all the natural resources, whether land or climate or water, but there is no. And here I'm pointing mainly to Africa. Africa is a very promising for us in the GCC due to the geographical distance, plus the plenty of water and the land that's available. But the challenge here is coming in the logistic and the infrastructure. Africa is very promising, but for us as a private sector, we would love to have a combined effort and investment from the companies or the institute or government that are really interested in building the infrastructure that combine with agriculture investment, because we as a private sector, we cannot invest in the infrastructure. When I'm talking about the infrastructure, the railroad, roads, and port as well. So this is not agricultural company job, it's a government or a specialized or institution, for either private or government, to go and invest. So the solution is to have a more affordable by investing more in the country that in need, which mainly Africa, due to the growth in population as well as the natural resources available in Africa. This will lead me to 2 points, which is the challenge and the recommendation, which I will maybe will have more discussion on it. One is the challenges are the following. When we talk about food security, it's just not just only the availability of the products itself, but also there are factors which has been phenomenal in the last years, which is the climate change. Climate change is a very important factor, and we are addressing it. So we see countries that they were very well positioned in producing certain crops, but due to the either drought, unfortunately, or even some flooding in some cases, that fluctuate the market. So we see that moving of the crops pattern from country to another. But at the end of the day, it's going to be one of the globe. So when I'll give you one real example today, we are supplying UAE some hay from California. Today, California is facing a drought, and the price has shooten up. Even the commodity is not there. But being diversified in South Africa, in Argentina, or in Europe, that gives the customer, these are the worries, and this is the sustainability. The customer, they need to know that their goods are available. That's where they go, and you see how can you ensure the sustainable supply of our product, either food or animal feed. The last point, which is the recommendation, I think, from our experience with the UAE government, if we have a long-term vision and partnership with governments or even international institute in order to strategize on a long-term basis, these challenges can be addressed and can be solved. And I'll give you a real example. In Egypt, for example, they are producing, the Egyptians, they are producing more more grains than any countries in our region. So what we have reached the government and we spoke, you have the Nile River, you have the lands, why don't we have a long-term strategic partnership with you guys, same like what we are doing in UAE, in which we will be investing in your countries and we will be supplying you, and that this insurance or this long-term contracts and providing them with the grain that will ensure us there is a market And they will ensure also the finance, because this joint project, the people, so that makes that project is more viable, more commercial in a sense, because it's based on economical advantage for both. So when you have the offtake, and when you can go easily back integration and the supply. This will leave me to the end, and I will be more than happy to ask or to answer any question that you need. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.